But first off, let me just say thank you so much for joining me.
Oh,
I really appreciate it. It's I've been wanting to talk to you for a long time, and I think this is as good as time as any because I see some cool stuff coming out from you guys. But I want to talk about that later. I
okay.
just want to first ask how you're doing.
Oh, yeah. I'm hanging in there. It's things slowed down quite a bit for us, so I'm maybe working a little less than usual right
Hmm.
now. But then I guess the one nice side effect of that is that I've gotten to spend a lot more time here at home in my studio and playing some music, which I haven't really done for about a decade.
Oh,
So,
all right, all right. Yeah, I was gonna ask if there seems to be kind of two camps, and I fell into the first one here that I'm gonna list off at the beginning. It's kind of like wanting to do stuff, but not really having a whole lot of motivation to do it, and then
mm,
feeling guilty about that, and then
yeah.
accepting that it's okay. And then once I accept it is okay, then I got this burst of motivation to start working on music. But so it sounds like you're really taking advantage of the time.
I have been. Yeah, it's been giving me a lot of sanity, actually. I
Yeah.
think honestly, without it, I think I'd probably be losing my mind a little bit. And then, also probably driving Kelly crazy too. So, yeah, having
Yeah.
having me holed up in here for hours a day is probably a good thing for both of us.
Yeah. I know. I was thinking about that. My wife, she works for the city of Seattle, so she's an essential employee. But there was a few weeks that she had off, and for the first 2 weeks of her staying home for this, it was good. But she hit that third, fourth week, and she's used to being outside all day, and she
Oh,
started
yeah.
kind of like going a little stir crazy. And I'm like, she's like, "How can you do this?" And I just pointed to the corner with my giant Eurorack system and guitars and everything, and I was like, "This
Yeah.
is how I make this work." um, have you? I'm wondering, like, have you have you been? Well, I know you guys are just releasing stuff, but you've probably got like always got something on the back burner of your mind design wise. But have you kind of had any motivation in that regard, or is this a moment where you're like, this is where I can take some time off of that?
Yeah, it's been more like that, honestly. It's
Yeah.
really hard to, we have, well, there's Zero Control, which we're launching today.
Hmm.
That's been finished since last fall
Okay.
and was actually supposed to be launched in February. And then it just kept getting pushed back further and further. And I think it's hard when you're seeing something that you finished a while ago getting pushed back further and further and further.
Uh huh.
It's really hard to have that motivation to go ahead and, okay, well, let's design something new that can
Yeah.
also be released potentially. Because in addition to the Zero Control, there's a whole other project that is at like about the 95%. Well, actually, probably, honestly, it's probably further along than that. It's probably more like 98, 98, 99. But to order the last prototype boards for it. But that project too is so close to being finished, but and it's really it's hard to see how you can finish it and get it out into the world when you can't even get, your basic stuff out into the world. So yeah,
Hmm.
it kind of prompted me to just take a step back and relax a little bit and be thankful that I even have the privilege to do that. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, I guess that's what sent me into my makeshift studio, which actually grew into something a little. I was given another room in the house to fill it out a little bit better, and yeah, so yeah, I've just been hiding out in there and making music.
Yeah, well, that's awesome to hear. So with the delay of the no control, was that was that like all coronavirus delay, or was there a little did like the Chinese New Year kind of stuff happen? I mean, I imagine by that point it was already built. So
Yeah, so yeah, we're well aware of Chinese New Year, and we that's like a big part of what I do, along with our purchasing person John, is
hmm.
try to get things ordered and in production in effort to avoid that.
Yeah.
I tell you, that's bitten me in the ass so many times over the past years. You announce something at the NAMM show, and then you go into production, and you realize, oh wait, this is the worst time to go into production right after the NAMM show. So no, we were well situated to avoid the Chinese New Year altogether. It was entirely related to the coronavirus.
Okay.
It basically held up a lot of stuff. The biggest thing it held up was the metal work. And a lot of our suppliers are actually based in the United States. So like out in California, they had actually shut their shop down. And they're still shut down, actually, I think. I haven't talked to them today, but as of last week, they were. And so that really slowed stuff down. We were getting some stuff, but we weren't getting all the stuff. There's always a bunch of different parts that are coming from a bunch of different places that make up any instrument or product that you're making. And sometimes it's the smallest things that can delay you. I mean, I remember looking at hundreds of Moograph sitting on tables when I worked at Moog years ago, waiting for one small knob that had gone out of stock, and we kept building them because it was a new launch and they wanted to have them ready to go for the release date. But there was they had all, the thing is, the thing had like 5 or 6 knobs on it, and they had all but the one.
Oh, geez.
Waiting for it like every day, like, when's that thing gonna get here? And it's frustrating for sure. And in the case of the zero control, it's kind of a similar thing. The biggest holdup was the metalwork, the enclosure that it sits in.
Okay.
We literally just got notice that there was some shipping last week, and we got the first bit of them at the end of last week, and we're supposed to get more this week, and that kind of prompted us to move forward with the build and go ahead and announce it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, the only thing I can really liken it to is my last release I did was on cassette, and the label wanted to release it, I think, in September, and it didn't end up coming out until like March because there was that ferrite shortage a while ago, so like no one was getting their tapes made. And I wonder if it's like this for you, but like you finish an album and you want it to be done by released by September, and then it like the world doesn't get to see it. By the time the world saw it, I was kind of like not over it. I still liked it, but like all the excitement about like, oh, this new thing I made was kind of like, yeah, this thing's been around for almost a year now. Like, do you worry about stuff like that with the release of a module or a new product?
Honestly, that's almost always the case with any release for us, because I think maybe some people don't know this, but especially for us, and I think for most companies, when I finish something, or when we finish something, I should say, when we finish designing something more specifically, there's usually at least 3 months between that point and the point at which we actually have it stocked and built and ready to ship. 3 months, that's the absolute, that's everything going perfectly, which rarely everything go perfectly. So you're really looking more like 3-4 months. So you're always waiting 4 months. And then you got to add to that the fact that in some cases you've been developing it for a year or two prior to that. If it's a digital device like the Morphogene or the Rene 2, those were 2-year-long development cycles. So you're pretty much over it long before it even starts getting built. But the nice thing is, sometimes you get that chance to take a break from it and work on something else. So, for example, with the zero control, when I finished that, I immediately jumped over and started working on this other project, which isn't released yet. That's probably later this year. And so I was really able to kind of step away from it for several months. And then with this delay and being kind of trapped at home, I was actually able to bring a zero control home and play with it without feeling like I'm beta testing, which is a rarity. I'm always beta testing, and it's really hard to get out of that frame of mind of beta testing. And beta testing, that frame of mind can kind of ruin an experience as far as creativity, fun creativity.
Yeah, I could see that. So I imagine though, once it's released and you're kind of in that over it phase, seeing the excitement of people using it and seeing other people use it and all the, all over, the Instagram and YouTube videos and just like the general vibe of everything going around. I imagine that's gotta like kind of give it a boost back up, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Then that's like the fruition, it's everything coming to full bloom.
Yeah.
Nice, for sure. It's nice. And you feel some level of comfort, but I hate to say it, but for me at least, it's always very short lived, because immediately I'm looking to see how are people using it. What are they using more? For example, when Rene 2 launched, my big thing was watching every video I could find. Are they using states? Are people using that? Is that something we should develop more of? So it's very short lived. That sort of perfect period where you feel like all is well is very short lived for me. At least. I'm always been, and then the tech support emails start coming in, and I review those with Devin and Walker and Pete weekly. What are people saying? What are people having trouble with? What's the most seen failure that you're having on this? Now that we've got it out in the field for 3 weeks or so, are there failures coming in? And you got to walk in and check the production line.
Sounds like it never really ends.
It never really ends. It never really ends. Yeah, sorry. It'd be nice if it was just like, yep, that's done. I'm never going to have to think about that again. But it's not that way. It's just not how the job is. It's not how
Oh man,
the delay is kind of like the first time it hasn't ended, but it's paused.
Yeah, I have a little bit of, I guess, what me and a friend of mine are calling survivor's guilt with this, because I'm lucky in that I so far haven't been so financially affected that it's something that I'm really, really freaked out about. And it's actually given me more time to work on this and my socialization. That thirst is being quenched by doing stuff like this. I'm doing stuff like this a couple times a week.
Oh yeah, I can
so
see
I'm getting
that.
to chat with people. Yeah. So like, I have a little bit, but it is nice. Like when I stop beating myself up for that and allow myself to just, hey, it's okay to feel okay about something. I do, it's good to have some positive aspects. And it sounds like you're really, maybe this is some, like cosmically, maybe you deserve a little bit of a break right now. Right. You guys have been going at it for a long time. I had a question. I kind of lost my train of thought there, but let's just before we get too deep, I kind of just want to get to know you. And so let's just start. Like, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Central Illinois, Springfield,
Okay.
Illinois. Yeah.
Okay.
And stayed there till I was about 18.
Okay.
Yeah, went to school briefly at Southern Illinois University, and then quickly moved up to Chicago and went to school at U of I Chicago briefly. And then tried to play music in Chicago for several years.
Okay. So yeah, it seems like maybe Chicago is the equivalent of Seattle here in Washington. If you're in a smaller, maybe like it's not the hip place if you want to do music and stuff. So that's how I ended up in Seattle. So so what kind of music were you looking to play?
Oh, back then, let's see. I mostly played guitar and sang, played a little bit of keyboards and drums too. And I guess we would have been considered like a garage rock kind of band.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think that's what I never really liked that term, but I think that's what people would have
Yeah.
referred to it as. Yeah.
So going back a little bit further, was guitar your first instrument?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
And I'm always curious with that. Um, was there a particular song or band that you liked so much that you're like, I just have to, I want in on that? Or what got you into guitar, I guess?
Yeah, sure. The first thing I can think of is my dad's Led Zeppelin records.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, it was bass
Oh,
that
okay.
I wanted to play, but I don't think I knew the difference at that point. You know how it is. It was just
Right.
I could hear the bass line and follow it really well. And I know that I liked that. Now later I realized that wasn't Jimmy Page. That was John Paul Jones. And but in my mind that was kind of one and the same with the guitar. The bass
Mm-hmm.
and the guitar were kind of just one thing in my mind. Of course, once
Yeah.
I actually got a guitar, I couldn't figure out why I couldn't get those low notes that I heard on the record. Felt like I was doing something wrong for a while.
But you stuck with guitar, and then I also, and I got to apologize to the listener because I think half of them, or more than half of them, hate when this comes up, but it's got to come up. When did you start skating? And you still skate, so we got to talk about that for a minute.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. We don't have to waste too much time on it. But yeah, I skated in the 80s. So I'm like, I mean, I can remember riding my bike to the skate shop across town to rent the Bones Brigade video show. Because nobody owned it. You had to
Right.
save up some cash and chip in and rent it, and then have your friends over to watch it. So yeah, I guess that's like early. I think I would have started. I did find my first issue of Thrasher, and I think it's in '84. So
Wow.
it was a short period of time. It was like '84 to '89. 4 or 5 years in the '80s, and
Mm-hmm.
then I think what happened is I just got so into music that I remember like writing, skating less and less, and playing guitar and trying to be in bands more and more, playing in
Mm-hmm.
multiple bands, and it just got to that point where that was really the only thing I wanted to do was play music. And
Yeah.
before long, the skateboard was just like a mode of transportation. I wasn't watching the videos anymore. I think the last
Uh-huh.
video I would have seen in the '80s was Public Domain.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
do remember seeing. I mean, there was, it was Central Illinois, and we got a weird assortment of videos. So oddly enough, we got all the Elva videos from that time period, which most people haven't seen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but so I grew up thinking Alva was an awesome team, and I mean they were. Those were the videos like with Jeff Hartzell and Bill Danforth. Oddly enough, Bill Danforth and Chris Cook, both Alva writers, were the only pros that ever came to Springfield.
Okay.
I got to meet both of them, thankfully. That was cool. But yeah. So I think Public Domain, and maybe the first H Street video would be the last videos that I remember seeing. I definitely
Okay.
did H Street video, and I'm pretty sure it was the first one that I remember seeing. And then I didn't skate again until a friend of mine, Matthew Sherwood, who also has done some firmware development for Make Noise. He did the Tempe and the
Mm-hmm.
MIDI CD on the Zero Control, and I'm probably forgetting something else that he worked on, but those are the two really big ones. So we met at Moog Fest. We were on a panel for DIY synthesis, which is odd because neither of us really did much of that. Cyril Lance was also on that panel. Cyril's I believe he's the head engineer at Moog still. He wasn't when I worked there. He was. And he and Matt and I met, and I think Matt was just like, "Hey, you're about my age, and you're into electronics. We should be friends."
Uh-huh.
And he just started talking about skateboarding at one point, and I told him I used to skate. And he says, "Hey, I got this ramp I got to take you to," and it was this amazing indoor ramp called Thrashville. And I mean, this thing was amazing. It was like what you dreamed about when you were back in the '80s. It's like this
Mm.
is like an incredible ramp, and at that point, I was just like, okay, I gotta get back into this. I gotta ride this thing.
Yeah, I see on your Instagram, you're like, is there a pool that you're riding, or like a cool little like half pipe and stuff? And
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
is that a
yeah.
friend's or is that yours?
Yeah, we have some awesome skate spots in Asheville. People would be surprised how, I guess, how big skateboarding is in Asheville, considering Asheville's such a tiny little town.
Mm-hmm.
I think you know what it is. I think it is that our pavement out here is awful.
Yeah.
Partly because of the weather, and partly because Asheville historically, prior to the last 10 years or so, has been a very a poor city. So there
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been the same kind of development. And now there's a lot of development, but prior to that, there hasn't been a lot of development. And so the concrete around here is just awful, which I think led kids to build places to skate.
Okay.
So we actually have quite a few really awesome skate spots here.
Okay. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah, I bring it up because Ellison Wolf from Waveform Magazine is a good friend of mine, and we both kind of got into skating last summer again for the first time. I skated as in my teens, and we both got into it. And I'm full pads, man. Like every piece of
Yeah.
PPE you can wear while skating. I'm that old guy at the park now, but it's been a lot of fun, and it's been cool to find there's within the modular scene. There's a couple of us all out there. I mean, of course, Rodent is like, he's part of the bigger scene, but Alex from WMD is out there skating and some friends, and yeah, it's just it's cool. Like there's like these little gamer factions who are into video games, and then there's like the skateboard factions, and I end
Mhm.
up talking about both of those on the show. And I just want to say to anybody out there who's in neither, sorry about that. So let's get back to,
Well, I don't know
you,
anything about games, so we won't have to waste their time with that at least.
So you get to Chicago probably what in your 18 to 20, early 20s range, and you're
Yeah.
you're playing music, and is that something that you're like trying to make a go at, like a band, or is it kind of a hobby thing, or is it like we're doing EP, or press kits, and we're booking shows and doing tours?
Yeah, no, it was. No, I was going for it.
Yeah, I did it too. I did it too.
Yeah. And this was a little bit different of a time, just for some perspective. This would have been the early '90s. So it's like we didn't have a website or anything. We would
Right.
go wheat pasting posters for shows. We'd get our posters silk screened at I wish I could remember the guy's name. He did all the silk screening for posters in Chicago. Get your posters silk screen, and you mix up a bunch of wheat paste and go out like 2 to 3 a.m. like wheat paste and posters everywhere. I mean, that's how you got people to come to shows with posters. Kind of crazy.
Yeah.
During the day, each band member would get a stack of posters, and you go out and hit every record store in the greater Chicago area, there was a lot back then. I don't know what it's like. I haven't lived there in well over a decade, so almost 20 years. But yeah, I think just every record store. Some were really nice. You come in and like they knew you, or maybe they even liked your band a little bit, or maybe had a little, probably more pity. Oh yeah, I can make a spot for you right over here. Others, you'd go in and it'd be like this showdown. Like are they
Well, yeah, Chicago, big music town. So I imagine that was, like a common thing and a lot of competition. It's, to anybody out there right now who's like just trying to make a go at it, like as a solo performance or in a band, like it's hard work. And, if you're into it and enjoy it, it can be a lot of really fun work, and rarely does it really, really pay off. But when it does, when you have those small victories, it's cool, like, hey, 30 people showed up to the show tonight. Those are always fun nights.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. That's it's music is something you can only you really only reason to do it is because you feel the need to do it inside you. There's
Definitely.
no other way to do it. It's not.
Yeah. It's you're compelled to do it. It's hard to explain to somebody who's not into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where does like electronic musician or electronic music or interest in electronics as far as musical equipment come into play for a garage rock guy in Chicago?
I mean, one thing you got to think about. I mean, I think the reason rock was just what was around me, and I grew up listening to Van Halen and Black Sabbath and Ozzy and Metallica and all that stuff, because that was like the wildest stuff that was going on in Central Illinois in the early to mid '80s. So, but my interest, I feel like it started pretty early. The first thing I remember doing that kind of blew my mind was my dad had this really cool stereo system that he had gotten. He was in the Navy and he was over in Japan, and he bought this big stereo system there and like brought it back with him on the ship. And it had this unit that now I know it was essentially a spring reverb, but it was the idea behind it was it would make your record sound like you were in a concert hall. And it had settings on it that you could adjust, like the size of the hall and how many people were in there and all this stuff. And the idea was you play your studio album through this thing and it would make it sound live, made by Pioneer. And I hijacked that out of his stereo system and plugged my guitar into it and plugged that directly into my amp and experimented with that a bunch. And that was super fun. I remember that being like I think I got kind of obsessed with echoes and delay lines for a while after that. And I would just go to every pawn shop in the Central Illinois area looking for echoes and stuff. I acquired a lot of cool echoes at a young age. I had a Roland Space Echo when I was probably like 15 or so. I had a Roland Space Echo. It didn't really mean anything to me though. I'll tell you a funny story. That Roland Space Echo, I later traded it. And everybody later traded it for a Boss Metal Zone. The orange and black pedal.
I know it. Yeah,
it had just come out. The Metal Zone was like the new distortion pedal, and my friend had it, and it made this sound. It just like knocked you over, and I needed that sound so much. And I immediately, I took I packed some stuff up, went to the music store, and was like, what can I give you to get one of those? And the guy was like, we'll take that old Roland Echo. And so I was like, yeah, for sure, take it. I probably paid like $20 for it at a yard sale
Oh
or
my
something.
God.
So I didn't care.
Yeah.
I was getting
Yeah.
that brand new Boss Metal Zone. So yeah, Roland Space Echo for Boss Metal Zone pedal trade. Yeah, it was, I mean, at the time it was worth it because I loved that Metal Zone pedal. I used the hell out of it.
Right. That's so. I've heard so like talking to so many people doing this show. I've heard so many similar stories of, I had, they'll name something like that, which like now, like, what is that? What is that worth now?
Oh,
Like that.
I guess probably a grand or two,
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
They're expensive. No one will, I don't think people will make those anymore because it's a lot of work to get something like that running, keep it running.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know they make like the little, digital version of it,
Oh
or,
yeah.
or whatever. That's like the double pedal. But yeah, to that big box,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
my buddy Greg has one. It's a pretty cool thing.
I mean, I liked it back then. I remember thinking it was cool. It had chorus built in, had a reverb tank on it. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of cool stuff that I just found around. Yeah, all
So
kinds of
you
cool
were
stuff.
into gear. So like the gear side of musicianship was something that pulled you in early.
Early, yeah, music and like electronics. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
old. I was any Echo I could find, I was buying. I had like a stack of old DoD rack mount Echo units. And
Uh-huh.
just like weird shit that you find at like the pawn shop or whatever for $50. Anything that,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. And just what happens when I run my guitar through this?
Right. Yeah. It's so odd to me that was, I think, a pretty common thing that came with receivers and record players and whatnot, where the reverb, like I have this Real Tech, I think they call it a reverb, but it's almost like this really weird delay. It's a really cool effect.
Hmm.
But yeah, it was just made, and I'm just thinking like, why would you put this on your Boston record or your Bach record or
Right.
whatever? Like
But
I
yeah,
just
and then parametric EQs, like nobody knew
uh,
how to use correctly, but everyone was running all their records through them, just like ruining all the hard work that the mastering engineer and recording engineer did, like just in one fell swoop. Let's just ruin all of it. Yeah, it was a strange time for stereo, for home audio, I guess you could say.
yeah. Yeah. That's
Um,
pretty funny.
like not long after that, my first, the first, I guess truly electronic music that, obviously, the '80s was a big time for synthesizers, and but,
Mm-hmm.
I was younger, so I think to me it was all like a lead synth line was the same thing as guitar solo almost. I don't think that
Okay.
you distinguished
Yeah.
them. Sort of like what I was saying, like when I was like, oh, I'm into Led Zeppelin, I want to play guitar. But what I actually wanted to play was bass, but I didn't know that, and I didn't have. Actually, you're talking about the bass line. It's just, I just got what I could get, and
Yeah.
synthesizers are kind of like that too. And I think a lot of times you don't, when you're younger and you're experiencing music, you're just going where the heat is, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't really matter to you like how that heat is produced. It's just that's where that's the good stuff. I want to go where that is. But
Mm-hmm.
but I did end up. One thing I always tell people about is the strange way that I found out about the Buchla, which didn't really result in much initially because there was no way to research it, or at least at my library there was no further books. But the library had a record sale, and I bought a copy of Silver Apples in the Moon,
Mm-hmm.
and then I also bought this really great tape music compilation as well that same day, for 50 cents or something. They'd barely been played because it was Springfield, Illinois, and there probably wasn't a lot of people looking to check out Morton
Yeah.
records from the library. But on the back of the record, they talk about the Buchla and all that. But that was it. It's like, oh, this crazy, strange psychedelic record made on something called a Buchla. What's a Buchla? Go to the library.
Right.
There's nothing about it.
I mean,
So
yeah, just probably until the last few years, you probably couldn't find too much info on a Buchla,
exactly, yeah. So it was years before, once the internet kind of started happening, and then even then I didn't remember. But then at one point I remember taking that record out of a stack and saying, "Oh, Buchla, what is that?" Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
search this thing. What is it?
Yeah.
What's Buchla? And it's like kind of leads you in down this path. Like, oh wow, this is really interesting.
Yeah, and it probably also like once you're able to find it, you're like, oh, finally I can look this up, and you find it, and you're like, oh, it costs $30,000.
It wasn't even, honestly, at that point, I don't even know if maybe the E was, I don't think the E was actually in production yet. It was
Okay,
more like looking it up and discovering it and what it actually was. But yeah, I mean, like, I don't even know where you would go to find that. It wasn't like any of the music stores in Chicago had those.
right,
Um,
right.
yeah, so it was just kind of cool. And I guess maybe that's a testament to having things sometimes. If I don't know that I would have even remembered that record if I didn't have a physical copy of it to pull out years later and think, oh, I should
Right, yeah.
figure out what this booklet thing is that they talk about on this record. I should search this.
So you're okay. So this all this curiosity, because I don't want to do the exact same interview that you did with Darwin Gross. So I do want to take a moment just to
Oh,
say, if
yeah,
you
sure.
want to get the that's a great interview. I love Darwin, and it's 4 years old now. So I definitely want to cover what's happened since then. So
Yeah,
let's
sure.
like smash cut to you're in New York, and you're going to the like you're going to the library not only for music, but you're trying to figure out how to design circuits, right? You're
Yeah.
interested in analog electronics, and you want to like learn how to do it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, the Brooklyn Public Library, they had a really good reference library there for, well, I say really good to me because I was interested in learning analog electronics, which at that point in time is probably not what your average person, your student would
Mhm.
need to know to get a job. Obviously, this is like that person would need to learn about much different things to get a job with a cellular company or some sort of you know job in the software industry. So these books were kind of untouched at that point, but they were in the reference library, so they were all still there. They couldn't be checked out, which didn't really matter to me because our apartment at that time did not have AC. Brooklyn Public Library did have AC, so it was a great place to hang out
Yeah.
for an afternoon and read. And they also had a photocopy machine in there, and they were okay with if you wanted to photocopy pages out and stuff. So I was able to. They had all the Bob Peace books, for example. Bob Peace was a really good analog engineer author.
Okay.
His writing is something I would highly recommend to someone who is trying to learn analog electronics. There's something about how he wrote that just really connected with me, at least. And I think there's probably a lot of other folks out there who would agree with me on that. He had a good way of putting it to words. So they had a bunch of the Bob Peace stuff. And then they just had a lot of like strange old books on radio communication and just stuff that just is really would only be of interest to you if you were trying to make an analog synthesizer.
Right.
It's pretty
So perfect
outdated.
for you.
Yeah, exactly. It was good for me and probably not many other people in that area. I think, honestly, I think Dan Snazzy, what might have been in New York by that time. He might have been the other guy that would have been perusing those books.
Maybe you guys passed each other in the hall. Uh, so, and something I thought was funny from the Darwin. I just re-listened to it just to make sure I didn't like ask the same exact questions. But something that you mentioned in that is you went there, your kind of your goal, your pie in the sky dream was to work for either Buchla or Moog. And Moog was, they had the Voyager, and they weren't really doing a whole lot. They're not the Moog of today. So it's
No,
just, I love this idea of somebody studying what was then kind of an outdated thing to go work for these kind of obscure small companies. And that was like your dream. I love that. Um,
well, you gotta realize when you're just playing in bands that nobody cares about and nobody's buying your records and nobody's coming to your shows. I mean, I guess maybe your dreams are a little smaller. It seemed like a big dream to me. But
yeah,
yeah,
of
I guess
course.
probably
Yeah.
to people on the outside looking in, they were like, oh, he's going down another broken path.
Well, I mean, the timing of it seems like it was right because you did end up getting in with Moog and you worked on their production line or assembly line or.
I did a bunch of things. So they they hired me right before they were going to launch a little fatty. And the Low Fatty was supposed to be a big turning point for Moog, I think, in terms of producing an instrument that was a little more affordable and
Mm-hmm.
it had like maybe a wider potential audience of users. And so they were looking to add a couple people to the production line in order to be able to produce at maybe a little bit higher volume. I mean, I say a
Mm-hmm.
little bit. I mean, when I started working at Moog, there was, I think, 18 people there. So
Okay.
it was small. Yeah, compared
Mm-hmm.
to it was nothing like it is today. They didn't have that big, beautiful office that they have now. And
Mm-hmm.
it was in it was in a business park that was right upwind from the sanitation plant. So when you ate
Oh
your lunch
no.
outside, you got to smell dookie.
And
It was,
this is Asheville still, right?
yeah, yeah. They were in Asheville. Yeah, they were right next to the river. So you wanted to eat your lunch outside and sit by the river, but then if the wind was blowing, hard enough, it wasn't really a good thing to eat your lunch outside. So it was a lot smaller, and so adding two people was kind of a big deal at that
Mm-hmm.
time for
Mm-hmm.
them. And so they added myself and a fellow named Aaron, and our sole purpose was supposed to be to run this Low Fatty line. But then, and you talk about delays, there was a big delay, and so they were faced with either they were faced with letting us go or finding other uses for us. And so we did get laid off briefly, but then they brought us back in, and I started working with Amos in tech support. And so I worked with him in tech support for a while before they got the Fatty line running. And then that kind of became like a secondary job. Like I would help him when he needed, when the load was too high and he needed some help with that. Um, and then I graduated to the Voyager line, where I was the calibration person, kind of like the final set of hands on the Voyagers. And along the way, did a lot of repair work and stuff. Worked in shipping here and there. I mean, I did a lot of different things. It was a small company, so you were expected to do whatever was needed done. I mean, I remember the
Right.
first week I worked there, they weren't ready for me yet, but I had come down from New York City, and I think the production manager felt bad that I traveled all the way down from New York City to start my job, and they didn't have the line going yet. And so he took me in this room, and there was this of uh, of broken mocha fuckers that and he said, okay, well, here's a soldering station, oscilloscope, TBM. There's a box of mocha fogers. Let's see if you can pay for yourself this week. And the idea was if I could repair enough mocha fogers to, account for what they were paying me for the week, then, I was a good hire and they keep me on
Uh-huh.
next week.
Oh my God.
And I don't know if that was really true or not. I mean, I know that I repaired enough mocha fogers that they were really happy. They said,
Mm-hmm.
great. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't repaired enough. Maybe
Right.
I'm not sure. We never had to have that discussion.
Well, I think your guys' success as a company is definitely multifaceted. I mean, the design, of course, the ideas that of the modules that you've made, and I know you have such a great team, but I can't imagine that experience didn't just like give you such a head start, like to have you so well equipped to start your own company, doing
Yeah,
almost the same thing.
exactly. So, I mean, I think what I took away from working there, what I saw was an emphasis on customer support. And at that time, Amos doesn't really do that anymore. But at that time, that's what Amos did. He was the person who did all the technical support. They were a lot smaller, so they didn't need but one person. And
Mm-hmm.
but he was very like that was an important thing. Like a lot of time and effort was put towards answering every email as soon as they could, and getting repairs done as fast as possible and back out to people, and just also the way that he would interface with customers. And I had to interface with customers every once in a while. Like if he had too many phone calls, they took phone calls at that time too. Um, and they'd always taught me to just be really open-minded and really listen to what people had to say. And even when you knew that the thing wasn't actually broken
Uh-huh.
and so on and so forth, you had to let people play it out, and you had to slowly, kind of show them how it actually worked and why that was okay, and so on and so forth. So I really learned a lot about like how to be a good company, how to treat your customer well, I guess you could
Mm-hmm.
say. Which is something you don't really think about as like a person who's just dreaming of making some modules. You wouldn't normally think about something like that. But I think because I was exposed to it there, it was definitely something that was very important to me from the beginning. And
Yeah.
that's why we have today not one, not two, but three people on our tech support email, because I don't want emails to, just go unanswered for weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I want, when someone has a question about something, I want us to help that person as fast as possible. And same with RMAs. If we can turn an RMA around in a day or two, that's awesome. That person gets their verb back and they're happier sooner, instead of having to wait weeks and weeks and weeks.
Uh-huh.
So, I can't always make that guarantee. Obviously, right now it's harder because our tech support person is working from home. Our main tech support person, Devin, Pete and Walker, who also do the tech support, they're working from home as well. So things are a little slower, but we're still trying to keep up with that, like fast.
Yeah.
Fast.
Yeah. It's very clear, just, the vibe that you get. And from the people, I've talked with Walker, and just, you guys are clearly a very well-oiled machine. And I don't know. It's crazy to think about the Eurorack world and it being relatively small, but like in the Eurorack world, like, it's make noise. You guys are the thing, and that's like, and I think that's not, like I said, it's just like it's the multifaceted approach. And it just sounds like you guys just made all the right decisions in setting up the process. And
we just don't let you see the wrong decisions.
Right.
We keep those internal only.
Right. Well, man, I definitely want to get to the new stuff. And I feel like I don't know. I don't know if I can do this without somebody being like, "Hey, why didn't you ask about this?"
Yeah,
but
sure.
I had a few questions that I wanted to ask. And I'm because you guys are like, arguably the biggest name in modular. And you were talking on Darwin's show. As of 2016, it's funny to think of, like, in the modular world, of course everybody knows who Make Noise is, but you were like, you put it in this really funny perspective. You're like, but there are only 5,000 masks out there. So like, yes, I'm wondering, like, it seems like since then, that 2016, it seemed like this, like, kind of second wave of this really, really big spike in popularity of modular. I'm just wondering, like, how much, I'm trying to formulate two questions here, but like, I guess just since 2016, like, how has that changed, like, for you guys? Like, you're obviously much bigger. And what do you see as far as the Eurorack world goes? Do you think this is something that's going to continue growing in popularity, or are we going to hit a ceiling at some point?
Yeah, I guess that's a really good question. I think about that all the time. I feel like it's kind of hit. I feel like it's hit a ceiling potentially.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have any, if Kelly were listening, she would just be, laughing, because I don't have any numbers to back that up. It's a feeling.
Right.
I think that feeling for me comes from just, for a period of time, it was like every few months there was some other massive announcement. And when I say massive, I don't necessarily mean like a ton of people are going to buy this. We're going to make a lot of these. We're going to sell a lot of these. I mean, massive as in like, oh, wow, this is a huge step forward in the Eurorack technology, the renaissance that is Eurorack modular. Oh, wow, someone's making a fully digital dual VCO Hertz donut. When that Hertz donut launched, it was like, oh my God, this is incredible. We have a fully digital through 0 FM dual VCO. I mean, these announcements were happening like, one after another. Every 3 or 4 months, it seemed like something really like ground, earth shattering was happening, to our little tiny little market, like to the 5,000 people that cared. And I feel like that's maybe settling a little bit now, because we had so much and so rapid of a development, that it feels like maybe people are needing to take some time to learn how to use all this stuff that we've created. There's so much of it, it's so deep. And that's like, maybe I think probably what's more likely is that I'm projecting my own feelings onto it.
Right.
That's definitely where I'm at. Like, I sometimes, like, I have a whole case full of Harvest Man and industrial music electronics modules that half of which I have no idea how to use because I've never had time to. I want to, and at some point I will bring them home from the shop and put them in my little home studio and play some music with them. But yeah, they're all sitting there waiting for me to figure out the depths.
Yeah, I guess wanted to ask you like your general feeling of it, just because of the position that you're in, and it is weird to see like just the amount of new manufacturers that have come out since I started this show, 2 years, and it's been like huge. And then I wanted to also ask, like, how much impact. So we talk about this small world, like we say earth shattering, but we're talking about, like 100,000 people, maybe. I don't. Who knows? But
I don't think so.
No.
I mean, just to give you an example, if you go to our Instagram, you'll see we have quite a few followers on our Instagram. Now, a lot. If you also then read a lot of the comments on our Instagram, you'll quickly discover that a lot of the people who follow our Instagram don't own any Make Noise, and not only Make Noise, but they don't have a modular synthesizer. They're just following because they saw a cool video with some cool sounds and they clicked follow. So,
right.
I guess what I'm trying to point at is that it sometimes seems, you could go and you could look and say, oh, wow. I don't know where we're at. I haven't looked lately, but at one point we were at 80,000, which is a lot. And, but again, when you start reading those comments and you see it's literally like a video with something so basic as like, the bouncing ball patch on a mask or something that we've been talking about for almost a decade now. And these people, not only have they not heard of that patch, they don't really even know what a mask is. They're just commenting, this is a weird sound. I just looked this up and it looks like this thing cost about $3,000. You're spending $3,000 to make a sound I can make with a Super Ball that cost me 30 cents. It's just like, this is like, there's comments like this all over. So yeah, I think you got to take it with a grain of salt, man. I don't know how, I don't think that the full quantity there is actually people who are deeply interested and committed to modular synthesis. Very small.
That's funny. I was trying to figure out, because I saw somebody ask that and I was really bored one day, and I was like, I'm going to see if I can somehow try to get a rough estimate of how many people out there using it. And your guys' Instagram follower count was a huge factor of that. And then I looked at different, like, popular module demo videos, and it's like, well, how many people have watched that demo video 15 times themselves? So really, there's no real good answer. But I'm wondering also, just on that kind of, how much do you think, the no coast or zero coast? Actually, let's get confirmation on that. Is it no coast or zero coast?
It's all the above.
Okay.
No coast. That was part of the idea of naming it like that. People could kind of interpret it at will.
Okay. How much did that, do you think, broke you guys out of just our little modular world and got, I think there's a lot of modular curious people out there. And if you're already somebody who has, a synth setup or some sort of electronic music setup, the no coast is a no-brainer to kind of like dip your toe into something that you're curious about. So I'm just wondering, like, how much did that grow you guys, and as far as your just name recognition and whatnot?
Sounds like you need to be interviewing Kelly here. I mean, honestly, I'm not really in the day-to-day as much as people probably think. I'm most often I'm just a pain in Pete or Walker's ass, telling them to, frame the shot more square, make sure the white background's clean, low end in this, it's not going to translate over an iPhone. I need you to beta test this now. Stop what you're doing. I know you're doing something you think is important, but this is more important. No, you got to beta test it now. That's me. I'm like just making everyone's jobs harder all the time. But I mean, Kelly is more the person who could know like how the zero coast affected us as a company. All I see is, oh yeah, a lot of people like the zero coast. And my thought is, it's probably because it's like the size of a book, but it makes sound, so it's small but fun. Like
I definitely want to talk to Kelly. So tell Kelly there's an open invitation. I know we talked about it a while ago, but then I think you guys got really busy with it might have been around the Mimea phone, but
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to have her on. I would love to hear her story because I know I've heard you mention before. I know how much of an integral part of the operation she is. Yeah, so
Absolutely.
definitely love to have her on at some point. I see
Yeah.
you see I see you signal, and I thought I heard her laugh. If you can hear me, hi Kelly.
Right here. I just
Um,
Hi.
how are you?
Good. Good.
I'm hanging in there.
Sure.
Yeah, so I guess I think it's kind of funny that like you keep saying, well, you have to refer to Kelly because it kind of keeps you in a situation because you're still primary designer, so it kind of keeps
yeah.
your head clear to keep doing the thing that you do. That's your part. I don't know. That's what I've gathered from talking with like I said, Walker and everything, and just hearing how you guys run your show. It's like, I think why one of the main reasons of your success is because you have these people who they have their job and they're very good at their job. Like, I mean, how much did you luck out with Walker and Peter?
Oh, yeah.
Like Peter's Instagram videos, like I stop and watch those and sometimes my jaw drops. I'm just like, how the hell did he do that? Like,
Yeah.
so wait, Kelly, can you hear me right now?
Oh, yeah. I put you on the speakers now. I had them off because I didn't know if it was going to feed back, but it seems like it's
Okay. Yeah, we might get a little echo, but I'll edit it out. But yeah, I'm just kind of curious what you think. How much did the No Coast break you guys out of just the modular community? And do you see a trend in non-modular users kind of starting to get curious and do like semi-modular setups because of the No Coast?
Yeah, I think it definitely opened things up. When we first released it, it was pretty exciting because we had, well, for a lot of reasons. One, we wanted to offer something to folks who weren't already into modular. Two, we wanted to have something that was like a little more affordable and enclosed for someone to get into the kind of instruments that we were making. Three, we wanted something that we could also donate to. So we donated them to a range of programs such as a program out on the West Coast that works with girls who are incarcerated, some community-based programs in New York City, a local.
Is that Derubis? Is that her thing?
Yeah.
On the West Coast?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And then to some of the different synth libraries.
Who gave me this?
Nice.
Cynthia, we just donated an OCOS to project DJ Cherish for Love.
Oh, that was
I think
okay.
you interviewed as well. She's super awesome. So we just met through the internet and then met in person and hit it off.
Do you know the story of how I got hooked up with her and how like she kind of came into this the whole modular thing? I was in Michigan on doing a work conference thing, and I was bored in a hotel room, and I had brought like this little skiff, and I was live streaming, just like doing patches, and she joined in and started chatting, in the live stream chat, and was asking about like who are like the women in modular. So I told her to like go check out you and like all these other people, and then it just kind of exploded, and now she's like fully immersed, like she is full on modular. Like she was just kind of curious, and it was just really funny to like have this like chat with somebody that I didn't know on Instagram, and then she came on the show, and now I see her. She's just like this. She's all over the place. It's so cool.
She came to visit us like 2 weeks after we started emailing. Came
That's
down
awesome.
for a thing with the Moog Foundation and came to make noise, and we give her the OCOS then, and then she actually just got a shared system recently.
Oh, cool.
Nice. Nice.
So
well, I can't wait to see what she does with that. Well, thanks for jumping on. Did you have more to go? I don't want to cut you off.
I mean, I think it also, so I think it expanded who maybe had access to some of what we were doing. But I think we were also surprised by how many people who are already into modular were excited about the OCOS.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that it allowed us to do was a series of workshops. So Walker And I put together, some of my background is in education. So we put together a curriculum to teach people how to jump into the O Coast, and have done workshops in town. Like, we have a partnership with Girls Rock Asheville. We've done workshops with their campers as well as with volunteers, and then just have opened workshops up to whoever wanted to come to them. And we share the curriculum with our dealers as well as like synth libraries or any of the community partners we have. So that's, yeah.
I love that. And here I got to apologize to the listener again, because I'm always talking about the community aspect, and just like this, there's something about modular that kind of like, it kind of keeps the egos of the music side of the world kind of small. I think it's because no one can get super, super famous off of it or something. But just going back to like to the community aspect, I love to hear how involved you guys are with that. And I love to hear that one of the deciding factors of making the No Coast was because of the price of entry into modular. Is if you don't make much money, you're not going to get into it. But with something like No Coast, like you build that bridge for people to get started, because I mean, there are many modules out there that cost more than the whole No Coast itself.
Right.
And it won't do anything if you have just it. And then you got to buy the case and the power, and so I really love that. And like, I'm just curious how much, like, was that something that you thought of from the beginning, or like how did that kind of like, where does that emphasis come from on your end?
Kelly's reminding me of something that happened that really pushed it forward a little bit. We did the Machines and Music one year, and it was at that location there was a lot of foot traffic.
Uh-huh.
And I was working the table by myself, and all these kids were coming in. I guess I say kids, I mean, they're like whatever, 18 to 25, like younger people were coming in, not really knowing what they were coming into. It was free to come in and just check stuff out. And they were all really interested and all had a lot of questions. But then when they would ask how much something was, I could see, they were kind of crestfallen. They were like, oh, well, yeah, I'm not going to be able to get into this. And I remember that moment thinking about that, like how it would be great if we had something that to where you could point them, well, I mean, you can't afford a shared system, but here, check out this Zero Coast. And then now we have that. And I think that is true. That was definitely an original goal for sure.
Yeah. I've often told people, I think with what you guys do, and I think the Pittsburgh Microvolt is kind of in the similar vein, like, I kind of look at those as like, when people are kind of asking me, I want to get into it, I'll say, check those two out and see which one kind of fits your personality or whatever. Cause they're each their own thing for sure. And I think I don't know, you guys really hit it out of the park with how much personality that No Coast itself has. Like I had it for a little bit, and of course then I graduated to like a full-on modular system. But just watching the tutorial videos and building along with it, like it's amazing how quickly you can learn on something like that, and it takes away a lot of the intimidation. Like if you were to show me my case that I have, it's just off screen here, but it's 15U case. If you showed me that right as I was getting in, I'd be like, there's no way.
Yeah.
And having the No Coast early on helped me. It's not as intimidating. It's just a lot. So having it like laid out the way it is. And
we've got even people who work at Make Noise who started with that, like Meg, who does our shipping. She's a like classically trained violin player. We have a video that she did with the O Coast up on YouTube. But she started out, I started a women and non-binary and trans O Coast learning group. And we met for about 2 years, and we would just like ask questions and try to answer them as a group through patching. And that was where Meg started. It was a lot of people that I met as a volunteer and on the board of Girls Rock. And Meg just got like more and more into it, and now, has a modular that she plays.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I also, and this is kind of like like hard ground for me to cover, and as far as asking meaningful questions, just because I'm a male, but I do notice that within the modular world, there seems to be a lot of people like yourself and Chris from Noise Engineering and Alyssa, the S1 Library, and put a real strong emphasis on, you know, non-binary women and trans, you know, giving the you know, those people an opportunity to come in without the pressure of, you know, the dude energy kind of, you know, fucking it all up for them. And I feel like as a result, I feel like I see a lot of women, non-binary and trans people. I feel like the percentage of the community within our little slice of the music community, it seems like it's more proportional. I mean, it's still more dudes for sure, but like I feel like because of stuff like that, what you do, it's just fostering this more openness for it. I guess that's not even a question, but I just think that's really cool. I just wanted to
It's
say,
something you're seeing.
Yeah.
what's that?
I think it's, you know, part of it is, well, I think a big part of it is that we do a lot of education through Make Noise. That's why, like, we have so much emphasis on tutorial videos and people learning since, and just also looking at like what are some of the different ways that we can educate people to give them like a good opportunity and experience so that they feel like it's something they can get into.
Yeah, I just love that. And I guess I can't say thank you because it's not for me, but I want to just praise that whole
But
idea.
everyone benefits. The more we include a variety of people, everyone
Absolutely.
benefits.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Our dog's here. Trying to get her walk.
Not time yet, girl.
Well, I mean, I hate to go bring this up, but it's just such a huge part of our world right now. Like how has, I mean, we talked a little bit at the beginning about how the COVID-19 thing has affected you, but you guys have what, like, are you guys up to like almost 20 employees now? Like as far as a modular company?
Yeah. Well, every week is different.
Yeah.
Every week is different, just like I'm sure it is for everyone. We were a few months ago, I guess, back in March, when we were talking to friends over in Europe, who one of whom is from Italy, and we're talking about kind of what their experience was and trying to adjust as fast as possible. So pretty early on, we closed to the public. We're normally open. People come in for demos or to say hi, see the shop, etc. And then we had anyone who could work from home. For a while, we were totally closed, but still paying everyone. And then we kind of looked at how we could reopen at a smaller level so we could still keep people employed. So we've got anyone who can work from home is working from home, and anyone who it can't, which is really just like production and shipping, they're on reduced schedules right now, so that we only have like 3 people on the main floor at a time. We have a large building, so our building is almost 5,000 square feet.
Oh wow.
So we might have only 4 or 5 people in the whole building at a time, sometimes only 3. So some people have reduced schedules, but they are still getting paid their full amount, and I'm hoping we can have people work a little more next week. We'll see. It's day by day.
That's got to be, you know, it's funny.
We want everyone to be like safe and healthy. That's the priority.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we give everyone kind of the option, see where they're at, and just communicate with them about what they're feeling.
It's such an unprecedented thing, and it affects everybody in such different ways. And yeah, and of course, you know, like I started thinking heavily about like how's this going to affect the modular builders, you know, and then I thought about, you know, like companies like you guys and 4MS and, you know, some of these companies that have like a substantial workforce. And yeah, I was starting to like really feel for you, but it sounds like you guys are doing, as you know, a really good job for the circumstances. And yeah, I would just want to say I'm so sorry that you guys are going through this, and I hope it doesn't screw anything up too much for you, because it's so weird. It's such a weird thing. But on that note,
but I think we've got to keep in mind that, like, I don't know, we're pretty lucky.
Definitely. I was talking with Tony about that earlier, like kind of like a survivor's guilt. Like my biggest concern right now, no offense, is not my modular manufacturers, but it's just part of something I was, part of the whole thing as I'm sitting here by myself and letting my brain go everywhere. But I asked Tony earlier how just personally how he's handling it, and he said he's doing a lot of studio stuff. Like, how are you personally handling this? Like, how are you keeping sane, Kelly?
Baking.
Well, yeah, I've been doing experiments in sourdough. So I've been baking sourdough bread and focaccia, and although they're not sourdough yet, but a lot of crackers and then like scones and cookies, and I've been baking a lot. And then I read a ton, so try to read at least a book a week.
Okay. What are you reading? Any recommendations?
So I am writing a lot too. So
Same here.
I'm working on a YA project. So I'm reading a book by Jason Reynolds right now. I just finished There by Tommy Orange, which is it's like 12 points of view of folks who are indigenous to this land and have a range of native identities. It's pretty interesting.
Okay.
And then I'm reading a book about brain science and how to use brain science to understand what people respond to in writing.
You've probably read, I don't know if this would be helpful at all, but just because we're talking about writing, and I can't reach it, it's behind me, but I've been reading The Hero with 1,000 Faces right now by Joseph Campbell, which is like the outline of the hero's journey, which is kind of like this, like this story structure of just about everything. And it's been really cool because not only am I like, oh, this is every movie and every religion and every like mythology, but it's also kind of like pertinent to your everyday life, like your own personal narrative, like everybody's their own quote unquote hero going through their own their trials and stuff. I will say what's that?
What are you writing?
I don't really know exactly. Well, I haven't told anybody about it because it's one of those things, because I don't want to be doing it for the wrong reason, but I guess I'll say it. For the last month, I've been picking up trash around my neighborhood because there's trash everywhere, for one, and as an exercise I'm kind of very doom oriented in my brain, kind of anxiety, and I was thinking about the apocalypse, almost on a daily basis, long before COVID-19. So I kind of am using it, and I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm using it as a device to trick my brain into investing in a future rather than a non-future. And so by doing that, by picking up trash, I'm investing in something that's outside of myself that is for the greater good. But now I almost feel like talking about it publicly takes away some of the value of it. But so I'm working on what I'm calling my Trash Treatise, which is I'm making some rules for myself. Like I have to listen to only happy or like classical music when I do it. And I have to make sure that I don't start fantasizing about who these people are who are throwing their trash and thinking about them in a negative way. I'm trying to keep them completely out of the thing. The only narrative I'm trying to keep in my head is the trash that is now no longer on the ground. So yeah, I'm just kind of like, I don't know what I'm writing it for. I'm just writing that out and reading and taking a lot of notes and just trying to just kind of work on some mental health stuff and kind of push it into the more positive realm. Totally. So yeah.
He is also a trash collector.
Oh yeah? Let's talk trash, man.
Everyone's garbage on the street all the time.
You got one of the picker-uppers?
I should get one of those now. I usually, if I see something that looks really sketchy, I just use some rubber gloves or something. I did learn that if you find a hypodermic needle, you're supposed to put it in a clear vessel, like an empty 2-liter soda bottle or something, so that the
I
people
haven't run
in
into
trash
any
processing can see what it is, but they aren't going to get stuck with it.
Okay. Well, that's good to know so my wife works for the Department of Transportation here in Seattle in urban forestry. So she tends a lot of the green areas in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is yesterday, all she did all day was pick up trash. And I'm not in a neighborhood with a lot of there's not a huge homeless population here, and there's not a huge drug using population here. So it's more just people throwing trash out the window. But she deals with she calls them their nests. She says it's not to be not sympathetic or anything, but she says there's a very clear pattern, what she calls like a junkie nest. They're kind of all the same shape and have the same stuff in them. And so she's picking up a lot of that, and she deals with a lot of needles. She found a loaded gun downtown Seattle.
That's scary.
Yeah, just stashed behind. And of course, every dude that I tell that story to, she's like, "Did you bring it home?" I'm like, "No, she didn't bring it home. She called the cops, man."
Yeah, no, I surrendered it and melted it. First I melted it, and I surrendered it.
Sometimes I think about the trash. I think especially around here, I'm not sure if it's always being thrown out the window.
Well, we have a lot of wind.
We have a lot of wind, and I think sometimes it gets blown out of trash cans and stuff. Or another really common thing here is people, well, first of all, like most of the population drives pickup trucks, and they use the bed of their pickup truck as a trash bin. So they just, when they're, they just throw stuff back there all the time. And then, if they're going too fast, the trash sometimes blows out of the back of the pickup truck. Yeah. So there's definitely strips. I have like kind of a route because I'm trying to just do it in my neighborhood so I can just walk straight out of the house. I'll bring a couple bags and fill them, tie them, leave them on the side of the road, and then come back and get my car and go pick them up. Wow, that's pickup. Yeah, I'm going hardcore on this. But also there's just so much trash in my neighborhood. Yeah. It's kind of a poor neighborhood, a lot of busy streets. But yeah, I have noticed the different. So the streets where I see them lined with garbage cans on garbage pickup day, they tend to have a lot of, loose trash here and there. But there are also walks where I can see it's the same person because, this person really likes this little tiny blue bottle of vodka. Like that's their thing. And it's like I kind of find those just streamed along the whole way. Right. Every Wednesday morning. They get off work on Tuesday, go buy a bottle of vodka, slam it, toss it. Yeah. Well, I live there's just like 4 or 5 bus stops along the street that I live on here. It's a pretty busy street. And in between those and at those is just a total mess. But well, hey man, I'm glad that I brought it up to find another fellow trash picker upper. I'm telling you, got to get I'm on my second grabber guy. Don't spend the money. I broke one. I went cheap. So I'd say spend the money. It's worth it. Well, let's see. What are we at time wise? I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time today. We are at an hour and 15 minutes. So you want to just we could wrap up on the thing that's releasing today. As of today, we're recording this, but this will be out Monday, hopefully. So yeah, what's the new stuff? What's going on? Oh yeah, sure.
Bye, Tim.
Hey, see you later, Kelly. Thanks so much for jumping on.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, we can talk about the zero control. So yeah, it's a patchable, clockable controller and step sequencer for voltage-controlled synthesizer systems. It was designed to be a patch pel for the Zero Coast. Initially, it was a little bigger than the Zero Coast, and it had some more stuff. And everyone that I showed it to said, such a bummer. It's not the same size as the Zero Coast. Yeah. And now I'm glad that reason I bring that up is it was actually quite a bit of work to shrink it down to the same size. And I imagine. Yeah. And so I went back into the office and spent a few more weeks getting it to be the same size. So I'm glad I did it. It looks right now. Before it was weird because it was just a little bit bigger. You know what I mean? It just felt kind of strange.
Which everybody who doesn't know how hard it is to design that stuff would be like, why wasn't it? Yeah, like,
yeah, it wasn't a matter of just hacking off a little bit. There was a lot of functionality choices that had to be made. And in addition to that, part of the reason that these devices are so thin and small is because everything's on one printed circuit board. And so sometimes it might look like there's nothing there, but there actually is something there. There's a lot of circuitry that's buried there that you can't see. So yeah, it was a matter of, there was a lot of nudging things around to squeeze it into that space. But yeah, people have told me that it's a rodent likes to call it an idea generator. I've had other people tell me they feel like they now have a micro easel. I think everyone's kind of seeing it in different ways. For me, I found it to be really helpful when recording music. Because it's not quantized. I've had a lot of times where I've tried to play the zero coast over MIDI, and the notes don't quite match up with the source material. Or the source material is very harmonically rich, and the notes, if they're the correct notes, it's playing the notes I'm asking it to play, and it's in tune. But it's like they need to be adjusted slightly, and so I've ended up doing a lot of times is figuring out what notes I want to play, and then setting them up on the zero control and playing them there instead, so I can tune them by ear to sound better.
I see. Okay, I see. Yeah.
I guess for me, it's been a problem solver at times, even. Which I'm surprised to hear myself say that, but it has been. Yeah, so it's a controller for the zero coast, but it can work for everything. It can work for your tape and microsound music machine. It can work for your big, massive modular. Years ago, we had oh man, I got to remember this guy's name. I'm going to have to come back to that story because I have to remember this person's name first. Oh, by the way, the place that made the screen printing in Chicago, Screwball Press. That was who that was. Screwball Press, okay. Printed the posters and stuff. It came to me while we were talking about picking up trash. I said, right, Screwball Press. Gary. I'm not going to remember his full name, so I can't tell the story. But anyhow, yeah, I mean, it's fun too. If you have a big modular, I think what could be cool about it is it's small and you can kind of move it around to different spots to control different spots of your massive modular system. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you want me to go into full demo mode or if you just want to ask some questions about it or.
Well, I was going to ask if when you made No Coast, was this always something that was kind of part of the plan, or was this an afterthought?
No, it really wasn't. And that's quite contrary to what Kelly actually wanted. Kelly actually not long ago, I think last fall when I finished the no control, the zero control, she said, okay, finally you made that. You should have made that 2 years ago. I actually never had intended for it. And that's the whole reason why the Zero Coast had the MIDI functionality built into it. I guess the way again, this kind of, you never know how people are going to use the things that you make. And I think in my mind, I was imagining the Zero Coast. First of all, folks who already have modular systems, I didn't think that they would want it or purchase it. So that was very surprising to me to see how many of them would get it and use it and take it on vacation with them, for example. I've had a number of folks tell me like, oh yeah, my shared system's kind of heavy or my regular modular system isn't portable. So I just took that on vacation with me. But that was very surprising. In my mind, it was made for the person who uses Ableton or Logic, and they could multi-track the Zero Coast or use it to make single shot sounds that they could put into the drum rack or something like that. And there are definitely people who do that. And so it was very surprising to me when I started seeing all these videos. And we were talking earlier about how when something comes out, like I watch to see how people use it. It's very surprising to me when I saw all these videos of people using just a Zero Coast. They're just patching it into itself. And then additionally, just a Zero Coast and say one other thing like a Korg SQ1 or some other kind of sequencer they had around or a reverb pedal or something. And so that was very surprising to me. And so more and more it started becoming obvious, like, oh, wait, yeah, we probably should go ahead and make a zero coast controller. And of course, in keeping with the spirit of voltage controlled synthesis and modular synthesis, we just made it so it could work with all of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of control surfaces. I've got like this Zork's ribbon controller. I'm not sure if you've heard of these, and I've got like this Hungry Robot, the CV keys. And then I saw, I'm watching the video for this, and I'm like, ooh, another control surface. That one looks so cool. So yeah, I'm not going to be surprised to see a lot of people bringing that into, maybe people who don't even have no coasts bringing that into their.
Yeah, it would still be useful if you had a little system, a little skip full of modules. And I think especially for someone who has a small case, a sequencer is typically a pretty large real estate investment in your system.
Definitely.
Even any really good full featured sequencer, they're pretty big. So if you have a small system, something like this could be a good answer to that question of how do I control this small system? I don't have any space for, say, 2 pressure points in the brains, or a Rene, or an Eloquencer, or numerous other sequencers and controllers that are out there. They're all pretty large, so this could potentially be good for that person that has a small case.
One of the first things I thought I'm doing, because I'm out of work right now, one of my like side hustle things I'm trying to do is just modular lessons via Skype. So I have a few students right now, and a couple of my students have small setups that they want to keep small. They like the idea of having a small thing. And so one of the first things that I thought of when I saw this was like a couple of my students. I'm like, oh, so-and-so would really benefit from that, because they have such a small setup. Their large sequencer is using really valuable real estate. So yeah, this is, I'm really excited to see how this is received and everything. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to say about that? Or is there anything new other than that you wanted to talk about? We kind of let the chat get away from us, which means it was a good chat, but
I don't have any other make noise developments to talk about. I guess on the zero control, I guess if I could, if I suppose most people listening to this podcast are probably going to watch another video if they're interested, or potentially have already watched another video about it. But I guess I could talk about things real quick that make me excited about it. And
yeah, since you got it hooked up and everything, let's do it.
Yeah. So, obviously step sequencers, they have gate and pitch outputs typically, so you can turn the notes on and off and change the pitch of them. But they're very steady and very strict. And I think one of the things really early on that I really was impressed with was the Buchla Marf and its ability to sequence time as well as pitch and create these more organic feeling step sequences. And so on the zero control, we've implemented that ability to sequence time. So there is a row for pitch, of course. There's also a row for something we call strength, and that's related to this internal envelope generator that the zero control has that lets you control how loud each step is. It generates a two-stage envelope with a very fast rise and a fall time that's tuned relative to the speed of the sequence.
So could you use this with a VCA without an envelope in the chain?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
You don't need an envelope generator. This will generate your envelope for you. And the envelope will be in time with the sequence. So each note that you program will be a discrete note. Mm-hmm. And then the last row controls your time. And so your resulting sequences can feel a lot looser and a lot more organic, for the lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. And I really like that. And it's funny because I was doing a demonstration for Nick at Sonic State, and I don't think it really, I could see that it dawned on him when I started to remove the strength and the time sequencing, and it became this more strict kind of standard step sequence sound. I could see that he was like, oh, wait, right, yeah. That sounds like, now it sounds like a step sequencer. And when you bring those elements in of sequencing, not just pitch, but also strength and time, the sequence, it can be a lot more expressive, and unlike what you would typically get from a step sequencer. And not that there's any problem with step sequencers, it's just that we already have so many of those, and their
Right.
basic step sequencer format is well available, both in hardware and software. So this is something a little bit different than that. And
it seemed like with the time knobs, it's almost like you could get a swing out of it.
totally, if you want to program a swing, you can program some swing. If you want to program little flams, you can program some flams. It definitely, it can have a lot of feel to it that you don't typically associate with step sequencing.